Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wallet Max Planet Positive podcast. I'm Bhuva Shakti, based in New York, and the founder of Wallet Max. We are a global community of startups, investors, and executives focused on increasing sustainable funding access, especially in climate tech, fintech, deep tech, and AI sectors. We interview one impact investor every month for our podcast. We invite them to share their background, but more importantly, what differentiates them from the crowd? How do they prioritize impact along with profits and planet? We deep dive into their personal and professional journeys and their mission to uplift. Today, we are speaking with Jessie Lam, venture partner at AiiM Partners. Jessie brings 20 years of experience in finance and investments with a career that has spanned New York, Hong Kong, Poland, Bahrain, and beyond. She leverages her deep operating and investment expertise to help industrial companies scale, having worked directly with over 70 portfolio companies. Jessie invests in visionary founders, building the future of data driven infrastructure, investing in enterprise technologies across three foundational domains: infrastructure, supply chain, and manufacturing, fueling innovation in industries critical to the future of the global economy. Let me now hand over to Jessie and invite her to say a few words about her background and career path. Over to you, Jessie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. I've watched so many of your podcasts in the past, and you had so many inspirational women, so I'm a bit intimidated today, actually. Um, thank you for having me. I've done investing, as you had mentioned, for over 20 years. But some people may not know, I spent the first 10 years of my career doing quantitative finance on Wall Street. So
Yeah.
it's very different than if you meet me today, venture capital, different funds around the world. I have purple hair, like they don't let you have hair at Credit Suisse back in the day. But I'm happy to share some of my journey, and hopefully that can help some of the viewers that are watching today.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jessie. I think since you have a unique background that spans quantitative finance, operating roles, and investing, maybe I want to know what's your unique secret sauce that ties all of that together with such a broad experience that you have.
um, I don't know. I think to be a good investor or to an operator, it's the sum of all the parts, right? Like every experience that you have, every encounter, every company you work at or create, that kind of forms who you are today. So like, if I started out in venture, I don't know if I would be as good of an investor as I hope I am today, right? I think
True.
working in finance, working in Wall Street as a young professional, it helps me a lot, figuring out all the variables. There are the very common, option models that are out there, but also understanding what are the drawbacks. And so at a young age, being able to understand that, the data is only as good as that you're putting it in, right? And now I think that's more important than ever with AI, and we can talk about that. But to understand all of those variables, how they work with each other, it gives you a good framework for how I became a venture investor, where now you're doing very much the same thing, but you have way fewer points of data. But you're only going to
Hmm.
be
Yeah.
comfortable doing that if you've already had the experience where you have data and then you're subtracting different pieces. And so it's kind of like a good foundation to get to a point where you're comfortable investing not only my money but other people's money, a lot of it,
Yeah.
into a company, early stage. Sometimes there's a lot of unknowns. The founder themselves don't know, and so there are different things that you look for in a founder to give you indications, but those being able to synthesize all of those data points is really important.
I couldn't agree more. I'm an investor myself now, but I also started on Wall Street with the finance and technology and operating experience.
Mm.
What gives us a different perspective is you're not just investing money and expecting returns. You have better due diligence, you have better portfolio management. You're able to support your founders because their success is your success from the operating lens as well. So I
Absolutely.
couldn't agree more. And like you mentioned, yeah, definitely you are investing other people's money, so trust is a big part of it, not like an angel investor investing your own money. So you've built a global career across New York, Hong Kong, Poland, Bahrain, as I said in my intro. What's the pivotal moment that shaped how you think about capital and risk today? Or has it always been quite similar all along your journey?
No, definitely not. I mean, now from week to week, not month to month, day to day, like it's all different, right? Your
Yeah.
calculations. So that's also the thing is like you can't just sit within your financial models, right? You can't just sit
Mm,
within a certain framework that you have set up for yourself. It used to be, oh, okay, I invest in you today, and then a year from now, I see whether my models are right or wrong or whatever, but like that's not how we operate. Hour by hour things are changing, and so that's something that I think is important to not only be a good investor but to be a good founder and operator is. And it's quite easy to be very, very overwhelmed. How
mm,
well you are able to synthesize that changing information and its impact into something that you care about, whether it's your portfolio or your company, your family, your livelihood. How quickly you're able to synthesize that and use that information is your edge today. And so that doesn't mean that your brain is just faster than everybody else's. Some people are, right? There are definitely genius founders out there that are, but also,
yeah.
how the tools that are at your fingertips to be able to help you, how to use your team, how your team uses those tools. AI is one of those tools right now. So like in the framework of until we hit AGI, AI does not replace a person. AI allows a
Yeah.
person, in my opinion, to just do way more output than before. But I see it as a tool to enable us, not necessarily, hey, let's fire 10,000 people, especially on a manufacturing floor, which is where I generally like. You're not replacing that with AI yet. It should be used as another input into how you synthesize this data.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. There are like so many regulatory changes, geopolitical changes, economic challenges. Now, every day or multiple times during the day, so a solid foundation is really important to make those decisions that are long term, right? So you're not, calculating and changing on a daily basis. You've also worked with over 70 portfolio companies across infrastructure, AI infra, and climate tech. I also want you to give a quick explanation of what does AI infra mean to our viewers versus the infrastructure itself as a sector. And have you identified any patterns when you make investment decisions in these sectors, or are they more independent to each other?
Yeah, I mean, infrastructure in general is something that I feel like not just because you're a venture investor or you're an investor, not everybody is necessarily a right fit for this particular industry. I started my first fund back in 2014, and
Mm,
that was headquartered out of Hong Kong. And we were helping hardware startups around the world, consumer, enterprise. We've done robots and drones. We did medical healthcare tech. And it was basically helping a hardware company figure out their supply chain because we had access to the southern province of China in Shenzhen and Guangzhou, Dongguang, and all that. And so, if you are a hardware founder and you are trying to manufacture at scale, it's quite difficult if you're not from China or speak the language, understand their legal systems, their financial systems to set up there, right? So
yeah.
that was kind of our value add as venture investors. And what that allowed me to learn, you're kind of like, okay, how do you go from Wall Street to that? Well, like it allowed me to go into a lot of factories and I got to, eat in the cafeterias and sit with the workers, saw an assembly line. I can see how a tier one, a tier two, a tier three factory operates and are different. Tier one doesn't mean they're better. Tier one just means that they do much larger volumes, right? And so
Yeah.
oftentimes, companies will be like, hey, I want to obviously work with the best tier one. It's like, no, 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 you're a startup. You're you're looking to produce maybe 500 of something, right? Tier one factories don't have minimum order quantities of 500, right? They have thousands, hundreds of thousands. um, and so it gave me a lot of unique perspective on how some of the parts of our industrial sectors work. So how does sheet metal get made? What is a
Mm.
CNC machine? I learned from the ground up basically what DFM is. I didn't know what that used to be. It means design for manufacturing. And so that means
Yeah.
that something that you create is able to be manufactured on an assembly line and repeatedly in the most optimized, efficient way. And that's something that they don't necessarily teach in engineering school. So you can say you're a mechanical engineer, a hardware engineer, and be a really great founder, have a great idea, but maybe everything has to be redesigned because how are you going to create 10,000 of those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
At
it
scale.
was at scale, exactly. And so it was a really big learning opportunity for me. I was living in a new country for the first time, starting a new career in a new industry. It was all very new. Um, and it was exciting and I loved it. And I felt like I could add value and rigor to venture capital. And so, myself and my partners who I love and adore and are friends with to this very day, we set out to start this venture fund. Venture in Asia for Asia was quite new.
Mm.
Was around the time where a lot of the West learned about Alibaba and Kuaididi and Baidu and all these big unicorns that the West had never heard about, but they're like they've reached unicorn status just by accessing the Asia market. And so ventures like, okay, we don't have to ship some of that capital to Silicon Valley. We can keep it here in Asia. And so we were like, well, actually, Hong Kong being a port, one of the reasons why I grew
Mm.
up that way is for international trade. So it was a really great place to start a venture fund where a lot of these great hard technologies were getting birthed. Um, so I got to ride in like cool helicopters, like all sorts of fun things. We got to play with 5G before 5G was a thing back then, in different studios. I think we used a gaming thing, like a 3D gaming thing. Like, it was just so many fun things that was happening and going on, but it's difficult. You have to face the realities of physics and hardware, and there's no amount of software or code that can overcome a poorly designed piece of hardware. And so those are the realities, and those are the things. That's why I say, as an investor, you may not be ready for the industrial world because you're interfacing with everything that's physical, your environment, your natural resources, how people listen to things, see things, transportation. All of that there's certain realities that software can solve and certain realities that software will just never be able to overcome in this particular sector.
Yeah, so everyone was there was this now we have an AI hype. There was this software hype, investing in everything software, building software for everything. But at that same time, I believe you have been chasing innovation in the hard tech, 5G, and similar spaces. So I would say that's a very unique perspective that you are bringing to this investment sector. Now, a quick double click on AI infra and climate tech. We've had a couple of Zoom conversations, email conversations. I know how much you're passionate about AI infra and climate tech. Why do you have a personal conviction, especially in these sectors in this day and age?
Because it's necessary. If you think about all of the industrial revolutions, we went through steam and we went through electricity, then we had the first, web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. It's necessary, right? Like we have really smart people doing things like working on oil rigs or,
Mm.
building football fields worth of solar panels, building new solid state batteries, all of the things, transporting your Christmas trees, from wherever to the, like there's just all these different things that are happening to make our society move and work. And I think for the first time during COVID, um, the lay people got to see what the impacts are when our industries stop working or are told
Yeah.
not to work or whatever it is, right? It impacts your food, your oil, your internet, your holidays. I remember because like at that time, my mother-in-law was like, "Oh, we can't get Christmas trees," and I was like, "Why?" They're like, "Oh, Christmas trees aren't grown here." I was like, "What? How did the supply chain impact the supply of Christmas trees?" Um,
Yeah.
and so it's like, okay, well, if we're going to make things better, and so better, I say because it will be, more efficient, cheaper. Yes, that's all capitalism. We believe in that. But also, like, let's try and make it greener, more sustainable,
Mm,
right? Because anything that you do that's an improvement on any of these big industries that I had mentioned will have immense benefits to all of society. So it's not adoption of, one person or one household with one solar panel, right? It's like, oh, let's change the way the entire country of India does water treatment for their manufacturing, infrastructure, right? So like anytime you come up with an innovation, the impact is immense. And so like I'm like, okay, well, we're already behind on a lot of our goals in terms of climate change, sustainability, the Paris Accord, things like that. Why not start with the places that have the largest impacts? It's also easier to make the largest economic arguments in that particular case. I tend to be, as you can tell now, a big nerd and a big math person. And so it's easier to make arguments when it's like, okay, it's going to be better for your company. You're going to make more sales. You're going to save more water. The customers, appreciate this. Da, 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 da. Versus like, I will not be able to tell you if purple is like the color of the year or consumer trends. There are a lot of people that use a lot of data to do and predict those things. I'm not one of them, right? And so for me, I'm like, okay, where can I make the largest amount of impact? There needs to be a lot more transparency about these industries because people don't know a lot about them and they're very, very specialized. All of the decisions are multi-billion-dollar decisions and they're
mm,
multi-stakeholder. It's hard. It's easier to build a moat, I hate that word, but a moat when something is really, really hard. And so, everyone always says like hardware is hard in venture and in the world. It's because it is.
yeah.
But I think now at least people have an appreciation that it's also very necessary. And so I love it. I love everything that's changing about our industry right now. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it's not just changing the manufacturing sector or hardware, rather, it's also providing economic impact and benefits to the people and the community and the larger society, right? So that's where there is always a battle of, okay, is this impact or profit or for community or environment, right? So, but it's all in one. It's going to be a ripple effect impacting everything together for the better, right? So that's something I believe with your background, you're able to present the case. And that's what I believe most of the investors in your fund want to hear because you're going to invest their money in other people. Now, we touched upon data a little bit earlier in our conversation. I want to a little bit deep dive into that. What is meant by data driven infrastructure and what does that actually look like in practice from an investor lens?
Yeah, I think I touched upon it. I see it as like a tool. When I say it's data driven, I meant this even back before this current AI revolution over the past, 5 or so years. It's just being having more information for you to be able to make a better decision in an area some of these sectors where not a lot of quantified data was available. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of data that's captured on your phone and on your laptop. But then there's also a lot of data that could be captured that is interfacing with our physical environment, right? And we've seen
Mm,
that happen over time. So I live in New York City, you live in New York City. There's cameras everywhere on every intersection. It's probably like one of the most well-covered cities out there, as
yeah.
a result of after 9/11, right? And so that's one example of data that's being captured to make decisions about how you're going to have more policemen patrol a particular area, right? Or what kind of city level investment needs to happen in a particular neighborhood. But you needed
Mm.
to have those cameras, you needed to have the infrastructure to send that back to some sort of data repository. You need to have software to be able to interpret a lot of that information into a particular report or a way or a dashboard so that the people that are the decision makers can make better decisions. And so that's what I mean by data driven is like, okay, well, what if you take that and you apply that to, overseas shipping, right? How, like, you
Mm.
can use that at every level. You could use that. We have a company that we invested in called Trade Verified that helps you do import export, right? There are reams and reams and reams of paperwork that needs to be filled out,
Yeah.
transport anywhere in the world. Um, Export, import, VATs, tariffs, product codes, transportation logs, sign offs, accounting of to make sure that everything is audited and accounted for. And so, like, if you could digitalize that and say, hey, this is all certified, this all checked out, or remotely be like, oh wow, this actually doesn't check out, this didn't meet some specification, and remotely revoke that entry, permit, or to amend it. Those are things that are all like much more well done in a more speedy, efficient way. If it's all digitalized, it's all transparent, it's all secure. That's very important. And that's enabled by a lot of this data transfer. So that's why I tend to say like data driven versus like AI driven. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
AI, sometimes it's not. Um, there's another company that I really would love to talk about. It's called Parsimony, and they're a platform that's a software platform, but they enable you to get connected, you as in, let's say, a hardware founder, to get connected with factories all over the world. And I had mentioned that I started out my career in venture in Asia, in China, but there are factories all over the world, right? And if
Yeah.
you're based in Texas, maybe you want your factory in Mexico or in Panama,
Mm.
right? Maybe it doesn't make sense for you, if you do the cost benefit analysis, to send it to China where they do electronics manufacturing, but you can find another factory that does it. In fact, we basically conceive this idea of nearshoring before nearshoring was like became a term. But like there
Yeah.
are a lot of variables, hundreds if not thousands of variables that go into your decision on where you manufacture, who you manufacture, how you manufacture, whether you use injection molding or CNC for metals, all of these things. And so this platform helps you do that. It takes your CAD design, it breaks it down into vectors that can be turned into schematics for your manufacturing. And they can even suggest alternative methodology or substances that are greener, right? So all of this gives you access. It's data. Before, you needed somebody like my old fund Brink to connect you to the right factory in China that does exactly what you needed at your order size. Now there are platforms that use AI to connect you to everybody. So it's a lot more transparent, a lot more egalitarian. You can make better decisions for yourself. It's less reliant on if you know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, which is a lot of supply chain and trade in the world is very much like that. And I love that. And I love that that is great for founders that are small, but also, big companies like, Black and Decker or like Lockheed Martin. You can use it as well because it's helping them make better decisions, right? And think about all of the gas, energy, transportation costs, all that would save if ultimately you end up working with someone that's closer to you, that can do exactly what you need, that has the specialty. That's what I consider data-driven infrastructure.
And sometimes some of these decisions you have to make for the long term,
That's right.
keeping in mind your supply chain, right? So, yeah, I remember also very well in the last 10 years, there is a lot of nearshore coming up
Mhm.
because before that, all I heard was onshore or offshore, right? So, I can see how this has been a separate sector that can benefit some type of founders.
Mhm.
Now, you've been an operator and an investor. Can you share a decision or investment that didn't go as expected, what you learned from it, and how it has reshaped, if at all, how you evaluate founders or investments today?
Hmm. I would say that you hear it all the time in a lot of podcasts or LinkedIn posts, like everyone's looking for grit. And
Mm-hmm.
I would like to put a personal spin on that. So the thing is that everybody in the world is telling the founder no, right? No,
Mm.
you can't do this. No, this never been accomplished before. No, you're not correct. No, your vision is not the right vision. No, I won't invest in you. No, I won't give you money or support or resources. And from the founder's perspective, they have to be so crystal clear and sure of themselves because they're not only putting their entire career, oftentimes their entire life savings,
Mm-hmm.
stability of their family, but also of all of the people that are on their team that's helping them grow. And sometimes you'll hear people like, oh, I like to invest in co founders because then there's someone to rely on. And so I will say that we look for, or I look for grit, but I also look for people that are emotionally mature. It is really difficult. So I have a particular founder, and we just hit it off, and they came up with a really really great idea. It happened to be about haptic feedback technologies. You even use for gaming or for medical. There's all sorts of different applications for it. And they had been working on this for a really long time. And it's a very difficult technology. Anyone who's worked in robotics knows that the articulation of a hand, um, and oftentimes we do five fingers, but in robotic world, you don't. It doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
They had been working on this for years, and their tenacity and clear vision was something that I don't know if I was able to articulate. I might have, when I was a younger investor, just said, oh, it was grit. But actually, it was about emotional maturity and being able to see what the vision is and what the vision's not, and who that they are building for and who they're not building for, right? As a young founder, oftentimes people get pulled into a million directions, especially if you're building something with AI. There's applications, everyone's trying to integrate AI into everything, right? And
Yeah.
like, what is it that you're building for? Who are you building it for? And there was a point when the founder was at a breaking point, I would say, having like kind of like a point, not quite breaking, but very very close to it. And this person asked for help, and I was like, wow, okay. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of founders, talked to, helped, like you said, over 70 of my personal portfolio companies. And this person was like, I have clear vision. I'm, clearly the founder type, great technology, but also like reached a point where they're like, oh, I have emotional issues, not emotional issues, mental health issues, which I need help with. And I'm going to reach out and get help for that. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, there's a lot of people that just suffer, and to sometimes tragic ends, but definitely to the detriment of themselves, their friends, their family, their colleagues. And I was very impressed by that. And I was like, oh, okay, this person needs to be a founder. Whether this company works or not, or their next company or whatever it is, this person needs to do something really, really great. And I at that time I was in Switzerland. I flew to their country to help them, to support them, because that's everything. You're not, people like to say they're a founder friendly investor, and some of that's true. But what are you doing for them, when the cards are down, when they lose a big client, when they're on the brink of bankruptcy? You may or may not be able to give them more money, but you can definitely be there for them as, a friend, a colleague, a mentor. And so that was something I was like, okay, I needed to be there. I thought I would be able to be helpful. It was a really difficult situation, I think, for them, for me, just to support them, definitely for them. And things don't always, like, you hear the stories where they're all the success stories, and then there's a lot of stories behind, the very human stories in the background, where you made a bigger impact than the fact that you invested in $1 billion company. And I can do really hard, unsexy things, but there's still humans behind those very hard, unsexy things.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell my founders also. So behind every decision, there is always a human being at the end of that line that you draw, right? And founder friendly is used very sparingly these days, also, or very much in every place these days. Depends on who you're talking to. But being there for the founder when things are hard is
Hmm.
the most difficult things or the most important things that an investor can do, because the founder should be feeling good to come and talk to you about their challenge. If
Hmm.
they try to show you only a good picture of what's happening and keep the challenges under the cover, then I don't think it's a partnership, right? So the day you give a check, you become a part of the team. So I mean, thanks for doing that. I can relate to how it can be when it becomes more emotional, not just on the investment side of things, which a lot of people are talking about it these days after
Glad,
the
I'm
pandemic.
glad.
So yeah, there's some awareness. Now, on the contrary, what is one investment that exceeded your expectations? What made it work?
Probably the company that I'm at now. Is probably um yeah, so for the past 12 years I've been running my own venture fund and having a great time doing it, trying to make impacts, trying to help people um where I can with some of the specialized expertise that I've gathered over the years. And then last year, very funny enough, I was talking to my friend Nick Myers, who's the CEO of Provocative Science, and I was very, very impressed. And very seldomly are you so impressed with a company that you're like, oh, I want to leave my fund and I want to go join that company and be on the operator side. And this was it. We build vertically integrated AI data centers inside cities. So not
Hmm.
not in fields in the middle of nowhere, because we do inference AI, and we use the airflow on the back of all of your GPUs. You know, like when your laptop's like whirling. You know, when you hear that
Yeah.
up. So we use that airflow that you're already paying for to cool down, your GPUs, that you're already paying for. You're already paying for the electricity, and we use that to capture carbon dioxide.
Hmm.
And so with that, we're able to keep the data center cool, but also we're able to develop a second revenue stream. And so you're basically doing two things, right? You're selling AI compute, which is super hot and scaling super fast, and billions of dollars are going into it. It's what's generating the $1 trillion valuations for some of our largest AI companies. But at the same time, you're helping to scale a climate technology that maybe would not have scaled as quickly if it wasn't associated with AI and AI data centers. So we capture the carbon dioxide, we purify it, liquefy it, bottle it, pressurize it, and we sell it currently to F&B outlets, so to restaurants or bars, breweries, airports, baseball fields, anywhere that basically uses CO2 for them to be able to have beer on tap, or
Hmm.
sodas, right? Like Coca-Cola will sell you their syrup, but you also need water and you also need carbon dioxide. We sold to, we're here now in Boston, lots of bars and restaurants during the Super Bowl when the Patriots were in the
Hmm.
Super Bowl. So things like that, it's like, oh, okay, well, you're doing something that is repurposing one byproduct for another. On the other side, after it goes through this CO2 extraction process, then the cooled air goes back into the data center. So it's a way that we can build data centers in urban environments that are good for the environment, good as neighbors, right? We're modular data centers, so
Yeah.
we take up big amounts of space. Um, they're generally smaller, so we build in old repurposed factories in cities that have power. We don't take up like 100 like a gigawatt type thing. It's generally like less than 10 megawatts, like 5 megawatts. And we're also helping to serve the beer and the sodas in your local neighborhood, right? So there's like it was really interesting for me because I was like, oh, I could do a value add as an operator there, because there's a lot of technology innovation. But on the other side, there's also a lot of financial innovation. you're saying like, hey, I have this old school commodity, which if you're ever a trader in Chicago, like, these 3 to 5 year commodity contracts, it's relatively uncorrelated to AI, right?
Yeah.
So you can have purchase order contracts, you can do a lot of factoring or purchase order financing, put that as a down payment for more GPUs, and it makes your margins reasonable to build a data center in an urban environment. Otherwise, the cost of the land, it's not cheap to build in Boston or San Francisco or in New York. And the cost of the power in an urban environment is not cheap either. It makes it incredibly difficult. But my theory as an investor, and people can agree or disagree, I would love to have this conversation, is that eventually the way that we've built out fiber optic cables in all of our cities, suburban area, urban, rural, eventually, for internet, we're going to do the same with data centers to be able to send out data packets for everybody for all their AI needs. And so we're going to have to figure out a way to build these data centers in high cost environments. And so it was like for me, it was like a really nice place that I thought I could add a lot of value. And it also was a nice culmination of my work as a quant, a VC, an infrastructure person, a financial person, a climate investor. So, it seemed like the really natural place to be. And we're also doing really well. So that's why I sit in old factories all day now. It's a little bit different than the environments I was used to as a VC.
No, that's a great example of circular economy, right? So there are multiple revenue streams. Everything is reused and also recycled for the benefit of people. And there is this huge controversy these days around data centers. They are
Mhm.
being built in suburban areas, underserved communities where people get affected due
Correct.
to so many things. And the electricity costs for people who have no idea why the data center is in their neighborhood is
And
skyrocketing, right?
their own electricity gets shot up, right? And then their own
Mm,
water quality gets impacted. So like there's a lot
yeah.
of like uh positive things, but also, negative unforeseen impacts, which now should be able to be foreseen to where we're building these infrastructures, right? So it's like, where would you build a nuclear power plant? Where would you build a electric transformer station? Where would you build a telecom relay station? Like those are all the things that we need to think about where we're going to build data centers as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, AI is helpful, data is helpful, but not at the cost of people and their health, right? Which is the basic necessity for anyone. So, I think this is a very good benefit in terms of you're in high populated areas where there is more need versus the underserved suburban communities where still there is not a lot of need, but making it more useful for everyone around.
I don't know
In
if it's
terms of,
suburban versus urban. I think it's that like where the people are. So like inference AI is like where the people
yeah,
are, right? So like in urban areas, there are underserved areas as well. And so it's kind of just like where are the end users going to be? And so that's like kind of where the data centers, especially for inference AI, should be located.
yeah, same as what we spoke at the start of the conversation, where you have the most impact for the most people, try to get there. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I wish you good luck in expanding this to a place where we don't have to debate about the data center and their health benefits more negatively, hopefully one day. Now, how do you think about capital efficiency? Because you are in the hardware sector. There is always this debate about, okay, lot of upfront capital is required. It's going to take longer build cycles. Lot of deeper investment in infrastructure is going to be required, more like the healthcare trials. And when the drug is going to be in the market, it takes a longer time, right? So, how do you talk to your investors and founders about the efficiency of capital?
Yeah, okay. I feel like I didn't come up with these questions, just so everybody knows, but this is like exactly my jam right now. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, no, that's one of the reasons why I joined Provocative, but also something that I've evolved in the way that I've been in a venture investor over the years. It's that and it goes back to that whole, hardware is hard thing. Um, my thought is that fundamentally the venture industry has been designed for SaaS, right? For software, but
Mm.
especially software with recurring revenue. Everything has a subscription to it. Um, and so that those milestones that you see that VCs are holding you accountable for, those are very much built off of SaaS products. And the way that a hardware product is built is obviously fundamentally different because, as you had mentioned, there's upfront costs, there's NRE, non-recurring engineering, there's DFM designs, you have to pay for tooling and molding and a whole bunch of components upfront so that you can manufacture it. And so even if you get all of the software, the firmware, the hardware design right, there's a big chunk that is going into whether you prototype this and whether you can manufacture it. And so that fundamentally being different means that we should fundamentally approach it in a different way. So what has happened historically was that venture would put in the initial capital, and then something would work, and then you get rewarded for it working or getting more customers or getting more pilots, and then you would get more capital. And it was all on the equity side. And the cost of capital for venture money is very, very high, right?
Yeah.
Because investors need to be rewarded for the risk that they're taking on. Very, very seldomly would you ever see debt on their balance sheet. More often than not, if a venture investor was doing due diligence and they saw debt, they would think that that was a red flag, right? Because I mean, by definition, a startup almost is pre-revenue. Early stage startup is pre-revenue, and so like, how would you ever, you can't take out debt and have no direct means of repaying that, right? That would sink your
Yeah.
whole company. But I think that debt, and especially whether it's a venture debt or asset-backed debt, there are different types of vehicles now. There are some like Lacey out in LA. They have a debt investment fund as well, where you can take on debt. It can be underwritten well, and you do have to obviously pay it back, but are available to earlier stage companies, and particularly hardware companies. And so they will be able to give you a lower cost of capital, even if they're charging you, I don't know, what the rates are, but like 15% or something astronomically high, 20%, that's still cheaper than raising more venture equity money. And so there are means where I think that for a hardware company where debt makes a lot of sense on the capital stack, but that
Mm.
comes with certain, guidelines, right? You need to be relatively financially well versed to know what to look for in the industry, what kind of terms you're willing to take, what kind of terms do you want to push back on. And at a point when you don't have a lot of leverage as an early stage startup, that's difficult. And it's difficult to have those conversations more so if you're not familiar with these things. Moreover, how to basically maintain that debt over time, right? Sometimes they'll put warrants or covenants on it. There's certain ratios that you need to calculate. So, which is to say, I'm trying to help a lot of founders figure that out. And there are a lot of other people that I can refer them to as well. It's like, okay, if you're a hardware founder, how can you use debt in the right way? What are the red flags to look out for? What do you need to maintain? Who are the debt providers that would be willing to lend even to a startup company, right? What
Yeah.
type of revenue counts when they're assessing your company? So all of these things, like it requires an element of education, familiarity, experience. But I think that that's the way that hardware companies need to be funded in the future. And so there's going to be essentially two different ways, right? There's, okay, what we've seen in venture so far, those milestones, those timelines, those churn number, all those KPIs for software, and then a separate parallel line for what you do for hardware. What types of milestones? A lot of, we call them EVT, DVT. They're like design validation tests and effectiveness validation tests, right? So there's different milestones on the hardware side, but that needs to be aligned. It's up to the VCs to align with how tech is progressing, because we're just a partner. We're just an enabler for new technology, to the best of the best, to rise to the top. um, we do need to be like compensated for that risk, just like the debt providers for these early stage companies also need to be compensated for that risk. But there needs to be a different definition of what all of those KPIs are, what those milestones are, um, what are the types of balance sheets, financial statements that fit. And I think more and more that that is an element that can be opened up for early stage founders. Early stage, I would be a little bit more realistic. I would probably say more post seed, like maybe a bridge
Uh,
round or a Series A, that kind. But it is a lot earlier than startups are traditionally think that debt is available to them.
yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more, especially on the capital side, but especially also if you're an early stage hard tech founder.
Mhm.
Let's say you have capital, you have an investor, but then there is also this challenge of finding that space to develop your prototype, test your prototype. I'm seeing quite a lot of those in the climate tech sector also today, where people come up with a lot of great ideas, but then they need an investor who can give them some space where they can build and test their prototype before it becomes a reality. Is that something you've come across? Is that something also you support with, or is that built into this early stage investment that you make in hard tech?
Yeah, there are, lots of venture studios and maker spaces, but like everyone needs to just have their incentives aligned, right? If someone's trying to
Mm,
take a risk on you because they believe in who you are as a founder, and then what your idea is, and then what your problem is, and then what your idea is to solve that problem, then that always comes with a cost. And that cost
mm,
could be equity, because at the that's a promise of the future safe node or something like that. It could be debt. It could be you're just paying them rent, right? But like whatever it is, they need to be aligned. And so no one's gonna theoretically, no one's gonna help you for nothing. Um, unless you have a billionaire uncle that you like, your long lost billionaire uncle or whatnot. But I think that that's also right, because that's how you kind of get the best ideas, right? Like I don't not believe in capitalism. I think we want the best ideas to bubble up. Oftentimes, actually, I see a lot of hardware founders that build things that are features, right? And
mm.
features of something to make cross country semi trucks, delivery better or faster or more efficient. And I'm like, that's great, but that doesn't build a whole company. You can't build a whole company based off of one feature. There are people that are like, oh, okay, well, I'm really into material sciences, and I've invested in material sciences before. But how does that become a product? If you're saying that I create this particular crystalline structure and I can mass produce it, but all I'm going to do is sell it to other factories. That's a really, really hard um, sales cycle, especially if you're not from that particular supply chain. Like, are you a person that knows all the paint manufacturers in the world, and you're going to sell some additive into paint to make it the best paint in the world, whatever it is, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
think about it. Does this make a whole company, or is it a feature, or is it an asset? Should you scale it to a certain stage and sell? Like there's a lot that you can do out there with your technology, but that does not always mean that you go all the way, or that venture capital is the appropriate uh, tool in your toolkit to use.
Now, where do you draw the line in such a scenario between meaningful innovation and over engineering? I mean, you could go in both directions, right? So, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I mean, I will say for me, I'm pretty clear. Like when they talk to me, I'm like, hey, this is not for me. I'm not the investor for you, and this is my feedback. I generally try and do that verbally, but I do try and do it. A lot of VCs will just kind of say no, or ignore you, or ghost you, or whatnot, and actually not give you any feedback. The reason why we do it verbally is because then our lawyers don't like freak out that we wrote something down. But like I still think that that feedback delivered well and thoughtfully is really valuable. And particularly with a lot of the founders that I work with, like they're not hearing that from anyone else, right?
Mm.
One, because they're the other investors, they might not even know what you're really producing because they may not have the background to understand it. And so therefore they're not even going to bother into understanding what it is that you're doing. And therefore, why would they have any, useful feedback, right? I mean, the feedback might be, oh, you need to dumb this down for lay people because we don't understand what you're doing. um, but like, so you'll see, and I'm sure you see it as well. Like in VC, like almost unless you're a Sequoia or you made it in Kleiner Perkins in the early Andreessen, all the other venture funds are becoming specialists because it's really
Mm.
difficult to be a generalist investor. A lot of the things you need to know something about something to be able to be helpful to your founders and to be in a very informed investor yourself. So I would say definitely go find your people. If it's something you really believe in, if it's material sciences, go find a material science venture capitalist, right? And then listen to their
Yeah,
feedback,
yeah.
you know?
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's there's a lot of different types of VCs out there now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of specific sector based. Earlier, it was only, okay, early stage, seed, Series A, general investors, but now there are so many layers into that also, which is good thing. So you can find that investor who can align with you better. Now, if someone is from a non-traditional pathway, let's say early stage career, they are an executive professional in the public sector, whatever that is, what do you think is the most practical way to break into venture capital today in this uh, climate?
um, I mean, that's probably just about what we talked about, right? Learn something about something. I was advising a young woman last week, and she was concerned. She wanted to be a quant, and
Mm,
she was concerned about what the job market might look like after she graduates from school. And with AI and a lot of this royal about the job market and what are the, does it make sense to be a computer engineer? What if AI just removes all needing for everyone's going to vibe code from now on, right? Like,
there are so many challenges with that.
yeah. And so I was like, well, I mean, a lot of the things that have developed in the past, in my professional careers, for the past like 20 years, it's like they're very, very new. So if there's something that's
Mm,
interesting to you, you could make yourself the expert in that, right? So like I have one investment that I made in quantum computing, and I will by no means say that I am an expert in quantum computing, but I was able to learn enough that I got comfortable into investing in this company, in this right founder, in the right sector, in the right timeline. Quantum computing might be a 20-year out thing, but this particular company does. It's kind of like a traffic cop for quantum computing. um, but so you can make yourself an expert in any new type of technology, AI or otherwise, because all new things are coming up all the time. And so it's not necessarily like when I was younger and you're like, oh, the 60-year-old managing director is the one that knows everything. They do have a lot of experience. But because things are changing so quickly, going back to the very first question that we talked about, things are changing so quickly that almost anyone who has the motivation, the desire, and the interest to become an expert in whatever new technology that's out there or make their own technology, they can very much become a subject matter expert. And then that makes them, whether you want to become an operator to learn how to be a good VC eventually, because then you would be able to understand what it's like to be a founder and empathize with them on the both the financial side, the tech side, the people management side, the fundraising side, or you want to go work directly as an investor, but at least you're going to be a subject matter expert in something. And then that person can come talk to you about it and get feedback. And you can see a wide breadth of solutions for that sector across all the technologies that are out there. So I'm just saying it's actually easier to become an expert in something because a lot of things are accessible to us now.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And also, we are kind of at time. Maybe if there is anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up, I would love to hear from you.
No, I really had a lot of fun just sharing this with you today and with your larger audience. I think there's a lot of changes that are very scary, but also very exciting. So be heartened that somebody out there is believes in you. You just have to find that right
Yeah,
person, you know?
there is someone. Yeah, no, definitely. Because as a founder, and even sometimes investors, when they are raising new funds, you keep getting those no's quite often that you have to build up your emotional capacity. But your network and trusted relationships are going to be a big help to get through this, right?
Yeah.
So, thanks so much, Jesse, for joining us. And thanks for sharing everything with our audience. So, our community is about investors, startups, and ecosystem
Mm.
partners. So, I truly appreciated your time and
Thank you so
expertise.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.